Welcome to Verify Infield, the Millwork Podcast. Your host, Jacob Edmond, CEO of Ductworks, will be interviewing experts in the industry to bring you insights and knowledge about the latest trends, techniques, and challenges in millwork. Whether you're a seasoned professional or just starting out, this podcast is for you. So sit back, relax, and join us as we explore the world of millwork. Here's Jacob.
Hey, everybody. We've got Dominic Rubino today. Thanks, Dominic, for joining us. I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dominic is an entrepreneur, a business coach, and a podcast host who recently had me on his podcast, The Cabinet Maker Profit System, and wanted to have him on today to talk about his background, the work that he's doing in the millwork industry with cabinet makers and other contractors alike, and just talk about the coaching that he does. Thanks for joining, Dom.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I want to talk about the industry. The challenges that we're all facing in finished wood trades are the challenges of overeating. We've got so much business, but now we've got to process everything, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that you work with and have spoken to many more business owners than I have. And so I'm really interested to what type of insights you have. And so I think to get started, though, would love if you could give a little bit of your background, your professional background, and how you ended up today hosting these podcasts in our industry.
Sure. Yeah. And I think most people, because our industry is relatively small, cabinet makers, architecture millworkers, furniture makers, closets, countertops, all that stuff. That's the podcast that you were a guest on, which is Cabinet Maker Profit System. But really before that, if you go back to the year 2000 was when I got my first cabinetry client, because I became a professional business coach in 2000.
Okay.
And so my first client was a guy that made pool tables. And I can't remember how quickly thereafter, but I had a guy that made coffins after that. Yeah. That's woodworking. It's still woodworking, right? Fine woodworking, upholstery, and everything. I come to the industry I was in trades like a lot of people were in my earlier years. And then I went away from the trades, but it's comfortable language for me because it's how I talk to my uncles. It's how we talk at my dinner table as a kid growing up. And my dad was a welder, journeyman fabricator for truck bodies. And so just that kind of language is what I've always been comfortable with. So I've always gravitated towards what I know, which is construction and trades.
Yeah. So that you said in 2000 was when you got your first, and you were a business coach then. Back then, I'm sure how you coach and things have evolved over the years, but what did that look like back then? What was that business owner coming to you for? And then how did you end up really steering him and coaching him?
So there's a lot to that because, and I think you and I joked about this before, in 2000, the word business and coach didn't go together.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing. Now everybody's a business coach, right? There's business coaches for all sorts of things. But I came from the corporate world. I was actually at Sprint.
Okay.
And that's where I started getting trained as a coach because I am working with this specific trade called interconnect companies. They do wiring for offices when phone systems are going to go in. And so I had to manage them on behalf of Sprint. And that's where it started. But I really loved it, right? I really loved that. So as I tell the rest of this piece of the story, you have to imagine that business coaching is the undercurrent that runs under everything. So around 2000, I left corporate. My wife was freaked out. I left the cushy job, the blue suit, red tie, white shirt job. But I became a business coach, loved it, did really well there. And then I realized I wasn't doing the things I was teaching other people to do in my own little side business. Because I had a business selling used junk on eBay.
Okay.
You remember eBay?
Yeah.
I haven't been to the site in 5 or 10 years, but back then that's where I started. And I was selling used junk. That was going okay, but I eventually transitioned that using what I learned as a coach to understand serving my customers better. I transitioned into selling used books.
Okay.
There's some funny stories there. We'll blow past them. And then I transitioned that into mail order medications. And with that transition, I was able to grow that business to 120 million US in 4 years before I sold it.
Yeah.
Because obviously that's a nice acquisition target for somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. All this time, I'm also coaching clients while I was running a $120 million mail order pharmacy. Anyways, I sold that business. Then I bought another business and I partnered with a guy named Brian Tracy, who a lot of people here will know from books that he's written.
Yeah.
He's been around for a long time. When I bought a company from Brian, he had 6 locations, and then I sold it after 13 years, and we had 237 around the world.
Wow.
So I built a couple businesses and sold them. But this is what I love, working with contractors.
Awesome. And so through that time, you were coaching all that time, right? And you
Yeah.
bought and sold, developed and built these businesses successfully. And I assume you said you had your first kind of this industry a coaching client in early 2000. I imagine you probably had more over that time from acquiring and selling and building these other businesses, right?
Yeah. Do you mean more clients?
More in this industry. Was there a pivotal moment where you said, hey, I want to niche down into these types?
Yeah, there was.
Okay.
I got part of being a business coach. And as a business owner, you're asked to speak at different events, right? So I like public speaking. And so I was asked to speak for a woodworking association event. And somebody comes up to me, like a tech guy from the association. I think it was a Millwork association. He goes, hey, can we video this and live stream it? I'm like, yeah, sure. We're just at the hotel you're always at, some Radisson, bad coffee in the back of the room. Everybody's done their day and they're at some Millwork meeting where we're voting on the minutes of the next year. And he goes, yeah, we're going to live stream you. I'm like, okay. After that, I thought, why don't I just keep doing that and continue doing it as a podcast? And so that's where Cabinet Maker Profit System was born. When I was speaking at a Millwork, what would you call it? An after hours event. It was just a local after hours event.
Like a
And
network
that's where the
event.
podcast launched.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so from there, was it people saw that and started asking for coaching, or did that turn more that you decided, hey, let me be intentional about this?
I was intentional. I was intentional because I love, you know what I love? The smell of wood. There's nothing that replaces the smell of like fresh cut wood. I just love it. And so I thought, these are people I understand and I can relate to this market. I like what they build. People are very proud of what they build. And if we can just speak on business terms, it was an underserved market.
Yeah.
Nobody knows, like the cabinetry industry doesn't exist to anybody, except if they're driving down the road and they see discount cabinets and ABC cheap cabinets. But there's so much more to it that gets overlooked. And the media, like guys like me, typically overlook the industry. And I thought, no way, man, let's go for it.
Yeah. And it's really a big piece of a much, much larger industry, which is the construction industry.
Again,
which
overlooked.
is massive. Yeah.
Underserved, overlooked. And it's full of people who, and this is what I love the most, because I'm a scrappy startup entrepreneur. I mentioned my kitchen table. I mentioned all my uncles. All of them came to this country. I was born here, but they all came to the country with nothing, like nothing. And they built themselves into something as tradespeople.
Yeah.
That's my normal. That's all my cousins, I got a lot. We're Italian. I've got family everywhere, right? When you talk to people, especially in the cabinetry trades, it's very common for somebody to say to me, Dom, I built a kitchen for my aunt. And then somebody else asked me to build a kitchen. And now I have a $2 million architectural millwork company. And then they look around and go, oh no, dude.
Yeah.
And I can help those people all day long. And I love that conversation because it's the same guy with the same van with a dog next to him who's still doing installs and trying to run it as a business, but try to get out of the field. They're the best people in the world because they want to make the changes.
Yep. So I went from Sprint to you were coaching and you built 2 businesses and sold them, right? You're still coaching. You did this Millwork event and decided, hey, this is an underserved industry. I love these people. How did that next stage of evolution get to, at what point did you say, hey, I'm going to also start a podcast?
That was the podcast. I'm
Okay.
sorry, Jacob. Yeah. When I did that after hours event for a Millwork association and they said, hey, can we publish this? I'm like, of course you can. And then I saw what happened there and I'm like, you know what? I should do that formally because I like public speaking, but I don't like traveling anymore.
Yep.
I traveled way too much. When I worked for Sprint, I remember, this will tell you how much I traveled. My wife, so when we were still dating, we had our 1-year anniversary. So we go out for dinner. It's a very nice dinner. I say, it's been great to be with you. I've been dating for a year now. And she goes, no, it's been 6 months because you travel a lot. And I was like, uh-oh, this is not good. And it took me a long time to come off of that travel schedule because everything I've done has required travel internationally. If you think about the company that I built to 237 locations, I had locations in Brazil, and they needed support. I needed to travel there. They had locations in Europe. I had to go there, all throughout the United States, in Canada, lots of travel. So I decided the podcast would allow me to be a public speaker without having to get on an airplane.
Yeah. So it's a vehicle to get to your audience more readily, more accessibly, and more directly. So that's awesome. All right. So that started, and the first podcast was Cabinet Maker Profit System then, right?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And then I started getting other listeners who were more builders. The cabinetry industry is really tied together on the residential side very closely to remodelers. And so I get questions from remodelers asking me more remodel business questions. And I thought, can't answer it here on the cabinet one. So that's when I started Profit Tool Belt podcast to answer more of those other trades questions. And that one took off as well. So I've got two horses in the race. They're both very busy podcasts.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So now we're to today. And so outside you have these two podcasts, right? You have two very distinct but intertwined audiences, right? Are listening to those that are running remodeling businesses, cabinet businesses, right? In the construction industry. And you're still doing coaching?
Yes.
And so what does that coaching look like today?
It's not only me doing coaching, but I've got a team of coaches as well, because I follow a system. No surprise.
Yeah.
Business coach who follows a system, right? So what that looks like is I follow the EOS model, which is from a book called Traction. Are you familiar with it?
Yeah. I have a lot of clients and I've met a lot of people now, especially in this industry. Maybe they're customers of yours. I don't know. Yeah.
It's the blueprint for, you can run any business on it.
Yep.
I've used that model or similar models to build the $120 million business. I used that model, the EOS model, to run the 237. I'm not allowed to say the revenues because I'm still getting paid on the sale, but you can do the math, right? That's pretty big global franchise. But I use that system, and that system works because it's dead simple. It holds you accountable to your own goals, and it's broken into small chunks. So you can just achieve little things consistently at working towards the bigger goal. Yeah.
So the system you're coach on now, EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, right?
Yeah.
And so I noticed there are a lot of mill workers who are implementing it that I know of now, but it is not a system that is built for mill workers first. It is
not
a business operating system, right? So talk a little bit about that. What is it because I think from my experience, I've been in this industry my entire adult life, and we can tend to be a little bit of an ego-based industry, and tend to be like, if you're not a woodworker, why should I trust you? You don't know what it's like to run a business in the industry, right? But the reality is everything, and this is any industry, is there's things you can learn from any business, right?
I'm so glad you said that, because anybody out there listening who says, this Rubino guy's a clown, he's never owned a millwork shop. I'm going to know, get that out of your head.
Yep.
Because you're in the business of the construction business. You just happen to run a millwork shop, cabinet shop, furniture. It doesn't matter what you make. You're actually in business. So be a business person who just happens to run a millwork shop. You could just be a business person who happens to be a roofer.
Right.
It's when people get, as you said, caught up in their ego and say, we're an architectural millwork shop and we built to very exacting tolerances. Yeah. You know what, buddy, there's a manual for that says what the tolerances are. So get it out of your head that you got to be the best technical person. Mm-hmm. You do have to deliver quality, but your job as the owner of the business is to run a business that happens to do finished woodwork.
Right.
Yeah. I just probably angered a lot of people, and I'm okay with that. But if I have to be the guy that delivers that news, then I'm also the guy that delivers profits and time so they can get back to their family.
Yeah. And that's part of coaching, because a lot of people in this industry have probably never had a coach. Have probably never had a mentor or somebody that's, hey, I'm telling you the harsh truth to make you better.
I prefer the term velvet hammer.
Yeah. But that's the thing. And I think I actually just last night was writing, because I mostly operate within millwork in the engineering realm, right? That's my experience. That's my expertise. And with that, I have owners that are reaching out to me constantly saying, hey, do you know of a great engineering leader that we can hire? And that's the MO today, is owners have a problem. Let me go hire a solution. And let me just find, in their mind, it's, hey, there's got to be rock star engineering managers on the market just waiting for me to find them and discover them and hire them. But historically in this industry, that's not how engineering developed. Engineers were developed as mill workers first, right? And then they learn technology and they filled a need in their business. And so there's not really a pipeline for that. But the important part is here is, so what has happened is there's a tendency for industry to promote from within and say, well, you're my strongest, most technical lead. I rely on you. I'm just going to make you the manager of all these other people. But nobody's coaching them to be a manager. Nobody's teaching them what it means. They've never managed. They've never been managed very well. And they're a technical lead. They're a subject matter expert, but not in the subject matter of people, not in the subject. And so that happens a lot to entrepreneurs. As you mentioned, it's a lot of business owners in this industry start, hey, I'm a craftsman. And then people start asking for my craft. So now I've had to build a business to support that. But they've never graduated from the craftsman to entrepreneur to
they found it hard. Yeah, they found it very difficult to move from being a craftsman to an entrepreneur. And those are the people that I just recently offended.
Yeah.
Right. And it's okay that I offended them, but now the thought's in your head, you can blame me for the rest of your life. But if you're truly here to run a business, to employ people, to sign agreements with your customers, whether they're residential, commercial, institutional, it doesn't matter, and then deliver on those agreements, it just can't be you for long.
Right.
You're always going to be limited if you're the only person delivering, which, by the way, is fine for some people. They just want to be a solo operator. It's fine. But for those who have growth plans, that's when they come and talk to me or you, because you're a leverage tool for growth.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. And two, some of those people might be saying, hey, I have no interest in being that I have this business, or maybe I have a partner who he's responsible for that. Right. That's okay too. But you still need to be able to understand, to be able to trust that partner with that portion of the business. Right.
Reminded me of something, and this comes from a mill worker, but I want you to picture this mill worker as I tell you his quote. Think of Sylvester Stallone, Rocky, Rambo, right? Now picture his angrier, larger cousin. Okay, that's my client. Talking across the table.
Yeah.
And he's done. I've got it. Now my people are my tools. So it took a while for us to get there. And he's one of the classic examples of a guy with a heart of gold. Visually, he's a little bit like, you're always worried. If he snaps, this could be the end. Right? Great guy, big heart. But he was the guy that started so many, just building something for somebody in his family, and now has a millwork company. And it was hard for him to get to that point where he realized that his people are, like the leadership question you brought up, those are the chess pieces he needs to move. And he's the one who told me, and I quote him all the time, my people are my tools. I thought it was a brilliant statement that he made.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that could be a hard mental shift for people, because also a lot of people might think they're people, they're not tools, and understanding it from a business standpoint, but having the framework for how to think about that side of things.
I don't have to be great on the CNC. We've got Johnny. Johnny's great on the CNC. So let's develop Johnny.
Yeah.
Or Jenny, who might be our drafts person now. How do we develop her so she can be a leader in that department and to eventually become the lead? It's developing the people, because those people are the tools to get the job done.
And I think in this industry now where we're at, people won't bat an eye at, hey, we just dropped $100,000 on a CNC and we need to spend $1,000 a month on PMs or whatever it is to keep that machine going. That's a very normal expense. But when you shift that mindset to, I'm spending $100,000 a year on my engineering leader or my project executive, and I'm going to spend X amount per month in developing, coaching, and developing this person, that a lot of times is, whoa, that's really expensive. But it's the same from the business standpoint. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And then let's just for a second put ourselves in the mindset or the shoes of the owner. It's hard to find people anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you want me to train them and make them more valuable to the market so they're going to get poached away? And my answer is unfortunately yes.
Right.
Yeah, because the alternative is if you don't train them and they stay, or if you train them and you can make the most of them and build a company around them as long as you possibly can.
Right. And two, I think people also don't, if you continue that thought, okay, what happens if I train them and I invest in them? Hopefully you've shown that you can do that, right? You've had to create the process to develop that person, which means you could do it again if needed.
Exactly.
Two, it also means that you're reaping the rewards of your business of that. And three, if you have a high profile employee who does jump ship and go to a better opportunity, hopefully it's a better opportunity for them personally and professionally. But two, that signifies to the marketplace, to the other people that maybe want their role, hey, that's a place that I know I can go and I can be developed and I have a career path.
Yeah.
That is one of your best recruiting tools is what if your current employees or past employees, what has happened to them?
Yeah. I love how you said that, Jacob. That's twice now you've talked about changing your mindset. So if you're worried about employees leaving, create a mindset that says, I train people so well that they're in demand by industry.
Yep.
Right? Eventually that's going to filter back and people are going to say, let's go over to Jacob's Millwork company and I'll be able to build my skills and then eventually do something else. And don't take that as a negative that you're going to lose people. You're going to lose people anyway.
Right.
There's people on your team you don't even want, you haven't lost. So don't worry about that.
Yeah. So shifting gears a little bit, use the EOS the entrepreneur operating system, the EOS model, right? That you're coaching people on, your team coaches people on. Okay. Yeah. And so a lot of people listening probably are like, yeah, I know I'm using that, or I've heard of it, or I've read the book, or I've read Traction, right? Can you talk a little bit about what are the kind of low hanging fruit, or what are the kind of high level pieces of that really gain traction so quickly for millwork businesses that is so common that we're not doing?
Yeah. So you just reminded me of something. Let me speak to the people who said, yeah, I already read Traction. To those people, and I've been guilty of this myself, please stop the shiny object syndrome or squirrel.
Yeah.
So I read this great book and you read it, but you don't implement it. And then you say, oh, I read another book. Stop that for a second. Just choose one system. And I don't care if it's Traction, if it's Vern Harnish's Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, there's other strategic planning systems out there.
Yep.
But choose one and stop. Don't go chase another flavor, because the accountability of putting the plan in place and making it come to life that's the magic. If there's any magic, that's how it works.
Right.
So coaching itself, you might think it's quite boring. Let's say, Jacob, that you're the owner of the millwork shop. I'm going to take you through quite a long and intense process of building your 10-year strategic plan. What does your company need to look like in 10 years? That's fuzzy. So then I'll say, what does it need to look like in 3 years? And we have exercises for that. And you mentioned this earlier, because Traction can be applied to any business, but I know how to apply it to a millwork business or a cabinetry or a countertop or a closet company, because there's specific things to our trade that you just can't apply all tools to it, right? So once we've got your 3-year plan, we break it down to a 1-year plan. And the 1-year plan, if we squeeze that really hard, you know what jumps out of that? Is what do we need to do in the next 3 months? That next 3 months, and I'm using air quotes, that next 3 months piece is the agenda for our coaching. So all we do is march steadily forward, or if I use a sports analogy, we just hit singles every single coaching meeting. Just step by step, chipping away at the big plan, but we only do it in quarterly segments. So nothing seems overwhelming. And then the hard part for a coach is stopping the shiny object thing.
Right.
Stay focused on the plan. We've got a plan, work the plan, just keep going.
Because I imagine what happens is you're meeting with, or coaches are meeting with the clients on regular intervals, probably, right?
Yeah.
And it's, okay, now we've got that 90-day plan, and here's what that means or doing today. Here's what we're working on. And then they'll come back and that owner maybe says, hey, I saw this thing. We should be doing this. And that's the shiny object syndrome you're talking about, right? Oh, I'm going to buy a new machine. We didn't talk about this before, but since the last time we talked, the salesman came by and has convinced me that we need this machine. It's going to fix all my bottleneck problems or whatever it is, right? Yeah. And it's part of that coaching, because as an owner as well, and I don't think people realize this, because the tendency might be to say, hey, I can go read Traction and I don't need a coach. And I can understand the concepts and I can do that.
Yeah.
But as an owner, you are constantly being sold to, marketed to, pulled in different directions for decisions, right? And I would imagine a big piece of what this coaching is coaching that owner to stay on the plan, right? Hey, look, let me remind you of what you told me your problems were.
Yeah, accountable to yourself. So we call it shoulder checking.
Okay.
So what's going to happen is, and Jacob, I'll just keep using you. We got Jacob's Millwork, right? You built this big plan. It's a 1-page plan. It's easy to refer to. It's easy to follow. It's hard to put together. But let's say that this question about a CNC comes up. We're going to shoulder check the plan. What did boss man Jacob say a year and a half ago? And we just go back and look at the plan and it says, oh, we need to improve efficiency. So we shorten our lead times so we can push product out faster with higher quality, more consistency. But we need to know our numbers. We're still lacking a number here that tells us X, Y, or Z. Or you might say, Dom, I got an opportunity for an MDF door program. Okay. Does that fit within the plan? And if it does, it's full steam ahead. But if it doesn't, you just look at your own notes and go, oh, I need to go fix this first. But once I fix that, I'm getting the new machine, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what are some of the really common pitfalls or things that you encounter early on with millwork customers?
It's such a great question. Can I tell you one? And it's not like I can see into everybody's shop right now, but the most consistent thing that I see is people don't know their numbers. And can I tell you why?
Yeah.
Usually because they're chasing the wrong numbers. And the reason for that is they're thinking that it's their accounting numbers they need to chase. And although that's an important piece, there's only a couple of accounting numbers we need. I want to show people how to follow their operational numbers.
Okay.
Because we can take action on the operational numbers pretty quickly. So we need to know those. That's what's generally missing.
So are there certain symptoms or things that cause that to be a tendency? Is it they're chasing cash flow and cash flow is a problem? Or is it that they don't track the numbers for operations to be able to know them?
Yeah. So the first thing is they're not sure which numbers to track.
Okay.
And it's a piece of work. They're already busy. They've got change orders. They got upset customers. They're trying to do new estimates, trying to hire people, pull in a million directions. And now I want them to sit down for 5 minutes and figure out what numbers to track, to which they respond. And who's going to put the numbers into this spreadsheet? Right. So there's a lot of other things that feel like they're holding a business owner back. So one of the things coaches know how to do is to help you sort and sift and organize what has to be done first. So sometimes putting numbers in place isn't instant. We've got to take steps towards that.
Yeah.
But the first thing is, what numbers do we even track? And why would I track that number?
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Because I know a lot of companies out there that don't track labor job costs, for example. They're not clocking into a job. They're not clocking into a work order. And that can feel like, if I had that information, I would be able to make so many informed decisions, but I don't have it. And even if you just say, I'm going to start tracking it now, it takes time to collect data to have something to do with it.
And I don't know what system to use. And by the way, you don't know my guys. They're not going to, I can barely get them to clock in. Now you want them to track jobs? As business coaches, especially in this industry, we encounter that question like 5 times a day, 5 days a week for the last 23 years. Like, we've been doing this a long time. Not that we have all the answers. I'm just saying that we've seen other people put those simple systems in place. And so we can help a business owner strategize how to put it in place with their team so that their team actually wants to track the numbers, or at least is open to doing it.
Yeah.
And then you just continue on that path, and tracking your numbers in that regard are so important. It actually leads to something that we do as coaches called the end of job report, where after a job is finished, you go back and look at, and you're already nodding, Jacob, right? What did we estimate? What did it actually cost? And what was the difference? What did we do right on the job? And what did we do wrong on the job? And how do we change things inside the company to do it right the next time?
Yep.
And that's the reason subcontractors make bank, is exactly the report you talked about, which is what we call the end of job report. If you think about whatever city you're in, there's a contractor who's just crushing it, making more money than you could ever imagine. And yet you're working harder than ever and you don't understand what they're doing different. The beauty of any contracting is that you do job A, and then you do job B, and you do job C, right? But we can reinvent ourselves between job A and job C.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you have a report like that, or you know which numbers, you know what to fix between job A and job C. So if you did something really well on job A, you figure out by job C to redo that.
Right.
And you just keep doing that again and again, year after year. It becomes very easy to hit the gross profit margins you want, starts to take time off, you're in control of the business.
Yeah. On Facebook, I'm a member of a handful of different industry groups that are pretty active. And it tends to be a lot of smaller business owners or people starting out cabinet shops. And almost every day I see somebody posting hey, how should I price this? Or check my logic on this, right? But it's a lot of, hey, I'm pricing this at this per linear foot. And I think what's interesting about that is because a lot of times I imagine owners are coming distracted with, hey, I'm more worried about pricing the next job than I am evaluating the last one.
Yeah.
But what they don't understand is that understanding those numbers about the last one is going to tell them how to price the next one.
That's where the accountability of having a business coach, I don't care if it's me or not, but having the right person there to hold you accountable, maybe it's your business partner, as long as you hold each other accountable, having that accountability to go look at those past numbers is how you can adjust for the future. Yeah, it's so critical.
So talk a little bit about, so we've talked high level, what does coaching look like? What type of clients you're working with? You mentioned setting that, working backwards from 10 years to 5 years to 1 year to 90 days, right?
90 days, yeah.
So for those clients that I imagine you have many you've worked with now that have gone through that.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Somebody that can try to think, I've never been with a coach before. What could it look like? I signed up today and I started working with a coach like Dominic or somebody from your team.
Yeah.
5 years from now, what is really the vision or the goal? What types of things? Because I imagine just like you work backwards, then as you start working forward, you might get to 5 years and say, wow, what did I think I wanted to be at 5 years? And I imagine that also evolves through that time, right?
It does. It does. Because not everybody wants money. A lot of people here are great family people. They want to take care of their family, have balance, just be at their kids' game. Practice, whatever it is. I'm going to do a shameless plug for my podcast, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But there's lots of client success stories on the Cabinet Maker Profit System podcast. There's lots of these stories, but this is top of mind because he just built a new building. There's a gentleman who started in a dairy barn.
Okay.
He was doing about 1.1 million, but not profitable. We're now on track to do, he hit 2 million in under 2 years. And now we're at 3 million and we're aiming for 5. And the gross profit is what other people would consider impossible, but it's not impossible. And the reason it's not impossible is because he put in the work to just pick away at it and make some incredible numbers.
Yeah.
And then I've got another company. I got to just look at this here because these guys started with me at around 3 million. We're now at aiming for 15 million in their growth. Amish company, great people. It's just super, super nice. What we did in those end of job reports I was just talking to you about, I'm now looking for my numbers here in my notes. Oh, there it is. So one of the things that we do when we do this end of job report is just add this little tiny notifier in there that says, what zone was that job done in? Zone 1 is close to your shop. Zone 2 is further away. Just draw a circle. Zone 3 is really out of the range, right? So can I share these numbers here?
Yeah.
So zone 1, gross profit. So gross profit is the high level profit before everything's removed, operating costs and things like that. But you have to have a decent gross profit or you're never going to make it.
Yeah.
So gross profit in zone 1, 47%. Okay. That's not bad. We can do better, but we're working on that. Okay. So zone 1, remember, is really close to your shop. Zone 2, the gross profit dropped to 40%. Same job type, same benchman, same installers, but that zone changed the pricing probably because of transportation, right?
Yeah.
Zone 3 jobs, 34% gross profit. That's not enough. 34% gross profit doesn't leave you enough to have net profit, which net profit gives you cash in the front pocket of your jeans. Anyways, are those?
Yeah. No,
examples?
absolutely. Because that's breaking it down, because a lot of times I would think business owners probably struggle they think, oh, that's too simple. You want to set up these zones, right? But that starts to categorize and give you something to now do something with, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I tell people, it doesn't mean don't do work in zone 3.
Right.
Go ahead and do all the estimates you want, but understand that zone 3 needs to have a little premium put on there for either travel or distance or something. There's something that now we know that the number's there, we can go fix it. But if we don't know the numbers there, we just operate blindly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So in the first company you mentioned, they went from 1.1 to now next goal is 5 million, I think you said.
Yeah.
When you first started meeting with them, do you think that they realistically would think, hey, in 5 years, we're going to be at 5 million.
No.
That's an achievable goal?
No, he said that himself. He was just trying to get to profitability. I'm thinking back now. he's definitely wanted profitability. He was working way too hard for what he's got. He was outgrowing his shop, and he needed balance. He was always good with balance, but he just wanted it was slipping, and he wanted to get it back.
Yeah.
By the way, he's now moved out of the dairy shop, built a 30,000 square foot facility, rents or leases most of it to other tenants,
Right.
now pays less in rent than he did in the dairy barn, and he has more space.
Yeah. And I imagine he has more of his own time, more options. So that's something that you touched on this, buying like time with your family, balance, a lot of things. I imagine also just succession planning was something that I know is a huge, important topic because there's a lot of aging owners and very few of them have a succession plan or have time to even think about that, I imagine, right?
Yeah. No, that's actually a great point. And I was going to add on this gentleman here, we're talking about, think about the succession plan that he can now leave his family a 30,000 square foot industrial facility. So the legacy of his family name has changed.
Yeah.
However, that's a good change.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are lots of people in this industry that started the same way you and I've talked about and who are now thinking, oh, it might hit the RV a little bit more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is succession planning. And the key to succession planning is having a strategic plan. It goes right back to traction, the EOS model.
Yeah. And I think whether you're somebody that's, hey, I might want to sell the business or I want to keep it or I want to pass it down, all of those options still require some common things, which is that your business is profitable, able to run without you. And whether you want to keep it in the family, whether you want to pass it down, whether you want to sell it, anybody who's going to, for it to be able to run without you is key to all that. And having, I imagine that's key to the coaching and entrepreneur operating system is it's a system, right?
Yeah. It's funny you say that. I have something called a construction millionaire blueprint.
Okay.
And it goes through the stages. Whether you want to sell it, pass it on to somebody else, or keep it for cash flow.
Yeah.
People sometimes, like you're asking here, what goes on in the mind of a business coach? We flow charted it because I have to train and support all of my business coaches.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't, you're talking about finding drafts people or leads. Like there's no school track for this.
Right.
You have to learn on the job, having come with the right skills. So I teach people how to do that on my team. So there's a flow chart. You do this, then you do this. If you get stuck here, you do that. You do this, then you go to here. So it's just called a construction millionaire blueprint. And it lays that all out. How does succession planning work? There's a guy who was just a guest on my show, and we're now going to have that conversation because he and his wife want to hit the RV. They want to go, but they're not sure that the person who's going to take over can pick up the reins. What a great way to have a strategic plan in place so that once a week, once a month, you can call back and talk to the person who's now running your company and say, how are you on the plan? How are you hitting it? And you just look for the variance. Where are we on? Where are we off? And fix that.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm interested in your thoughts on something because I've spoken with and worked with a number of owners over the years, both myself and now in the last year with consulting. And in my head, I've categorized them into two types of categories that a lot of them fall into.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it seems like I find millwork owners often are either what I would call the craftsman, meaning what we described first, right? They started as, hey, I'm the one who makes cabinets, and then a business developed out of that, right? But they're a craftsman first.
Yeah.
And then there's the guys who I would consider salesmen first, right? They're the ones who now they've established a business, right? And their role is largely the client relationships, the sales, the revenue driving, right? And then they have people that really run manufacturing and are the craftsmen, right? And so everybody's a mix of both, but those are the two heavily weighted I've noticed. And a lot of times the craftsmen first reach a ceiling where there's a limit to how much business they can do to where they're doing everything, right? And they struggle at that ceiling. And then on the flip side, the guys who are revenue driven salesmen first, they can build very massive businesses, but a lot of times they struggle with process and systems and numbers. They're like, I'm going to cover my sins with going and getting more revenue. I can go sell the next job.
Yeah.
And does that kind of make sense, or have you noticed any trends like that?
Yeah. So it's interesting that you laid out like that. I would say that the people I work with are 80% craftsmen and 20% sales or something else.
Yep.
And then just an interesting overlay on top of that is that if you talk about closet people, it's almost all business people who came into the closet business.
Right.
If you talk about cabinets, architecture, millwork, furniture, it's all craftsman driven.
Yeah.
Nothing is absolute. So I'm just
Right.
speaking in generalities.
Yeah.
But if I had to separate all the years of coaching, 80% of the people I've worked with are craftsmen who are ready to be a business owner. That's the wrong way to say it. They're just ready to get the business operating in a way that's proactive instead of feeling like it's always coming at them. Right?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And I imagine the other category that maybe the 20%, they're the people that either they're okay with just having somebody that's running that process. And like it's easier for them to just say, hey, I'm going to stay over here and sell, and I can hire somebody that implements the process that maybe would fill that, right? But that is interesting on closets too, because I do know there's a handful of franchise closet businesses, for example, right? That it's much easier, whereas I don't know if that exists in architectural millwork or cabinetry.
It'd be a little harder to franchise architecture millwork. You might be able to do it, but I don't know. Yeah. Closet side is a lot of business people get into that, or they get into their own challenges.
And so for that type of client, I imagine you've worked with and coached them as well, right? Do you find that you spend more time on different areas or topics in coaching than you do with the craftsman type guys?
Yeah. So you think it would be different for different groups, but every single business owner is different. And so it's never consistent across cabinet makers versus furniture makers versus guys that just do countertops and guys that do RTA. It's always a little bit different, but it comes down to the same themes. There's always issues around time management. Time for the business owner is an increasingly big problem because we're so busy lately. So you got time. Team. So people. And right now it's easy to get work. Almost all contractors are busy. I apologize for the newer contractors who are scrambling a bit, but right now is one of the best times ever to be in the trades because we're so in demand.
Right.
The problem is finding quality people. So that's the other thing we deal with is finding, recruiting, training, onboarding, supporting good people. Then you've got money. That always comes up in some way, shape, or form, right? And it's usually driven by profitability or not knowing your numbers. Yeah. Let me just do this. Time, team, money. Oh, and then you've got growth or exit strategy, like you talked about. And then there is sales and marketing that comes into it as well. And oddly, even though I just said it's easy to get work right now, not all work is created equal.
Right.
So if you're dealing with customers who are, I'll just say bad, and when I say bad, they're bad for you, you don't have a customer problem. You have a marketing problem. It starts in marketing, and people overlook that all the time. So we have to go out there and craft our marketing so that we attract the right kind of customers and we repel the wrong ones for us.
Yeah, absolutely. That starts with having the information to evaluate, to be able to make those decisions on. There's two questions I really like to ask every guest that I have. And I'm really interested in your take, having met with and have a different perspective, a broader perspective. So one, over the next 5 to 10 years, what do you see changing in our industry?
In the next 5 to 10 years, there's going to be a lot of turnover at that ownership level, like you talked about, right?
Yep.
It's the boomers retiring or passing it on to either their internal staff. Let's say their foreman or their GM wants to buy it, or somebody in their family wants to buy it, or they just sell it. So that's going to cause a lot of change. If the economy changes, and I don't know right now,
right?
But if the economy changes and things get tighter, people who don't know their numbers are going to feel the strain right away.
Right.
And what happens there is, unfortunately, indigestion gets you.
Yep.
And you find yourself not able to support the business, but not wanting to go out and sell or market. So that can happen. And then technology is changing very quickly. I know that sounds obvious. I've got a client I'm working with who's way beyond the CNC. Our strategic plan right now is made so that he can build the first 3D printed kitchen in his city. So everything that we're talking about is how do we utilize technology to stay at the head of the game, and his personal goal, build the first 3D printed kitchen.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So those things are coming, right? And then I know this sounds like you and I prepped on this, but we didn't. Outsourcing key positions so that you have flexibility, right? I know you do outsourced drafting work for people.
Yeah.
Because if I get a big contract or a complicated contract, I can't necessarily change my people that fast.
Yep.
But there's specialists out there who I can call in on a contract basis to help me expand or contract the way I need to. And that's going to be a trend that continues.
Yeah. I think we talked about this on your podcast. That's something that conceptually people are okay with in certain silos. I can scale up my install team and hire contract installers, and I can scale up my stone capacity and sub out stone, or I can it's in certain silos. But when we think about certain core responsibilities that that's just somebody in house, it's hard to wrap our head around that. But when you start looking at it from a numbers perspective, like you are coaching your clients to, and you say, is this task, the way we've been doing it, making the business profitable? Is it supporting the goals of the business? Is having this type of role in-house supporting my goal of building the first 3D printed kitchen in my city, right? Then the framework becomes very different for how you make those decisions.
Yeah. I hate to say it, it's all numbers driven.
Yeah.
I should add, I'm not a numbers guy at all. I need my bookkeeper to give me reports as graphs and pie charts, or I lose my mind because I don't want to look at a grid of numbers. It just turns into ants on a page for me.
Yeah.
But I could tell that graph's going up. That's good. That graph's going down. That's bad. Yeah, we got to go look at that. And then I go look at it.
And something else I think that a lot of people who aren't numbers people or tell themselves they're not numbers people is it's because they're used to being fed information that doesn't make sense.
Accounting language.
But the reality is it should be simple. And if it's not, something is probably awry, or the people preparing that information for you are not doing it in a way that is serving your needs. And so I think that's something else, because a lot of people get overwhelmed with it, and it is simple. It can be simple. It should be simple.
Yeah.
And if it's not, that's really where I imagine your business coaching, you're probably focusing a lot on that.
Yeah. You know what? It's interesting you say that, because one of the things that somebody would bring a business coach in to do is to be that sober second thought at the shareholder level of the company.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think, a business coach works with the president and for operations, but you have to go up one level.
Yep.
A business coach, at least the kind of business coach we operate at that shareholder level so that we make the right decisions for the long-term impact of the business. And we're keeping that business. It's like a board of directors, right?
Yep.
You're making those really important decisions. Now, you might be the CEO and the president. That's fine. We deal with that all day long. But there's a different mindset when you're making shareholder level decisions versus president decisions versus sub-assembly lead decisions.
Right.
Yep.
Awesome. The second question, and related, is what in the next 5 to 10 years do you see staying the same in the industry?
Unfortunately, I think the need for employees. In schools right now, it's tragic, but they view trades as a place that people end up in, not try to get into.
Yep.
So I think we're still going to continue to have problems there. The other challenge that we're going to have as owners is shaping the attitude of the people in our company. Right. That's going to continue to be a problem. And it always has been.
Yep.
That's not going to change. I don't know enough about access to capital and those kinds of situations, but it seems to have opened up in the last while. So there are more creative ways to get money into the business to use for your purposes, but you really have to know your numbers before you open that up, because you could be exposing your throat. So those are a couple of things that I think are going to stay the same. And then listen, I don't think the 3D printed kitchen's coming as fast as any of us want.
Yeah.
Right now we reduce wood to make product. Where does that shift come in? Where does the shift come in where we've got one side of the factory that creates sawdust and another side of the factory that uses that sawdust as the base product to print the kitchen?
Yeah.
It's going to come.
Yeah, for sure.
Right? It's going to come. I don't know when.
They're intertwined because, if we can't find people, it's how do we fill that void?
I need to add one other thing.
Okay.
The other thing that's going to continue to be a problem is business owners will continue to say, I can't afford the real estate I need. And whatever price you think is expensive today, 5 years from now will be, the markets I know, they're going to be 25, 50% more, maybe 100% more. I want everybody listening to take advantage of that uptick, because no matter what you're doing in running the business, you're going to pay a lease or rent anyway. You might as well be paying a mortgage, and you get that bump when you go to sell this business on that real estate. And if you don't, then you're losing out.
Yep. I think that's huge. And you even think about most all of the successful businesses in this industry that I know of, a lot of them are recognizing margin today because of real estate they or their fathers or somebody before them invested in, right?
So there's a company I know of, I won't say the city, I won't even say the country. Somebody that I know was looking to buy a cabinet shop because I get approached by those people too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they went and valued his place. They had some pretty good conversations. It didn't go through, but his cabinet shop's not worth anything.
Right.
Because he has one customer. He's reduced himself to one customer, which sounds good now.
Yeah.
But a new buyer does not want to buy one customer.
Yeah.
But his real estate, $27 million.
Yeah.
And he didn't pay $27 million when he bought it.
Right.
Crazy numbers. But all he's been doing in the wood shop is just killing time, while the real estate has continued to increase just because he's there and able to cover his mortgage.
Yeah. Cash flow and an investment he made way back when.
$27 million just for that real estate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy.
We're coming towards the end here. For anybody who is interested in finding out more about Cabinet Maker Profit System, Profit Tool Belt, Dominic Rubino, coaching you described here, what's the best way for them to find out more?
Love it if they came and listened to the podcast, because you're going to be a guest in the next few weeks. We've already recorded to be able to hear your insights on the show. If anybody's interested in getting the Construction Millionaire Blueprint, like what goes on in the mind of a business coach as they walk through the steps, just text me. Can I share my cell number here?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. So just send me a text message, folks, and say Blueprint. I guess that'll be the code word, Blueprint. And my cell is 315-903-7853. And just say Blueprint, and then I'll know what your report you've got or you want, and then send it off.
Awesome.
But come listen to the podcast. You get more interviews like this and lots of free info.
Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes for everybody listening who wants to click the link to be able to do that. And to you on LinkedIn and to your podcast, definitely go over there and check out Cabinet Maker Profit System. It's available, I believe, on all the platforms where you listen to podcasts.
All the places.
Awesome. I really appreciate you taking time out to speak with us today. I know this is a little bit different platform than you being on your podcast, speaking with other guests. I know a lot of people will gain a lot of value from this and hearing from someone with your expertise and your knowledge.
I like how prepared you were, Jacob. You sent me a lot of questions for today.
Yeah, we got through most of them. Well, awesome. And for those listening, you can share that Cabinet Maker Profit System. Go give him a review once you listen to it. I know that'll be helping him get that message out there for everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dominic. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Do you want to stay up to date about industry insights, new content, and our community of millworkers? Go to ductworksmw.com to sign up for our newsletter. I'll see you in the next episode of Verify in Field.